evening, everyone, and welcome to the Elephant We Don't See Diversity Dialogue. And welcome to everyone who's checking this out on demand later. My name is Kyla Hannington, and I'm the Public Outreach and Engagement Division Manager with the Prince George's County Office of Human Rights, the county's civil and human rights education and enforcement agency. We are the people who investigate complaints of human rights discrimination. We combat human trafficking around our region. We ensure all people can access Prince George's County government resources in the language of their preference, and we provide programming like this to build understanding across diverse peoples. The Elephant We Don't See Diversity Dialogue series is closing out its 4th year, which I have to say is pretty amazing to me. The Office of Human Rights and the Prince George's County Memorial Library System have been coming together to talk openly and honestly about what we learned from books we have read. Reading the same book each month and really trying to get at our takeaways. We believe that by being curious and being willing to read about, to inhabit another's experience for a moment or two, is part of how we build understanding. So many of you have been joining with us for these conversations since we began. So thank you so much. And for those of you who are joining us for the first time, we welcome you. We hope that you get something out of this conversation and out of the book. And we invite you to reach out to us afterwards for a conversation if you'd like. With me tonight are, again, Jose Villegas and Renee Battlebrooks from the Office of Human Rights. They've been faithful over the last year as we've had the departure of Michelle from the library system. Tonight, we are talking about Big Girl, a wonderful novel by Mecca Jamilah Sullivan. So welcome, everyone. And thank you, Renee and Jose, for being with us again.
You are welcome. Thank you. It is always a treat to get together with my colleagues to talk about different books, really to expand our universe, our personal universe. So it's wonderful. Hi, Susan, and hello, Mark. It's wonderful for you all to join us. So this book, and Vivian, hi. So this book really is, the way it's written is beautiful. I mean, the imagery is beautiful. And it's really about coming of age of a young girl set in Harlem in the 80s or 90s. I think it's the 90s. I don't quite. But it explores lots of different themes. But through the lens of body, and a body, that society says, has to look a different way. And so we're going to explore that tonight. So what did you think of the book, Kyla?
Oh, okay. Well, thanks for asking. So I actually found this book a little challenging. The beginning part for me was really challenging. She is writing when the book opens. So the book's in 3 sections. The first section, she's 8 years old. It's kind of the year that she's 8. And I was really impacted as somebody who spent a lot of my very, very young years. The first time I remember being told that I was on a diet was when I was 5, or maybe 4, because I went to kindergarten when I was 4. So it may have been just before I turned 5. I can't really remember, but I just have so many very, very strong childhood memories that were symmetrical to some of her experiences in terms of how she was feeling received by her parents and by like the larger society around her. And so I have to say that the beginning part, I was really like, okay, you have to be game. And also this is not about you. You're supposed to be learning about someone else's experience. This is the whole reason we read these books, Kyla. But I really had to kind of nurture myself through the beginning section. I will say when we got to parts 2 and part 3, and we had just at that point, very divergent experience. She's a African-American growing up in Harlem. And, I was growing up in Sycamus, British Columbia, and I'm doing that because it's about how big it is. And so, of course, these, high school years and later years were very different. I loved one of the. I'm sorry, Jose. I'm going to give you a second. I'm going to give you a chance.
No. You go. I know you have a lot to say, and I that's fine.
I was really interested. One of the things I loved about it was the it was rich. You know, it's such a rich. I've used this word before as I talk about books, but this one also really struck me. It's very luscious in description. There was language that the author used that was so amazing. Like there's a part where she talks about a paper bag and the mouth of the paper bag. And as somebody who fancies themselves a writer occasionally, I was like, I should steal that. I'm not stealing it, by the way. Let me go on record. I'm not going to steal it. But it was just so magical. And also, if you think about the idea of mouth, as we're talking about a book that's about food and this kind of like unfillable and shameful hunger, to invoke that kind of imagery I thought was absolutely fantastic. So I've been going to, I'll cede the floor if anybody else to offer initial thoughts if they want to.
No, one of the things that I kind of noticed, I know that it's different. Probably this will come more of a sexist thing, but it's, you know, the image that society has for a young lady or a woman, it's completely different than the image that a society has for a male, right? Yeah. But I just wanted to say that I'm just reading the portion of the book that I read. It kind of shows also what everybody's experience is at some sort of, you know, either growing up, even as an adult life, even as parent, right? And so in that is experience that what Malaya, it kind of what's going through, it was kind of the experience that it's a reflection of everybody in society in some sort of way. That's one of, I mean, I have some kind of comment, like, for example, myself, at some point I was like, oh, I went to a diet, right? You know, but my diet is completely different than, you know, other people's diet. And then in what sometimes females diet based on the image of society, how rigid they have to follow it.
Yeah.
And I do have, I guess when we get some certain experience, I do have some things that how not necessarily society of the visual, but also the structural thing of how like I have an experience what happened with my 3-year-old like not too long ago about the image of what people expected her to wait.
Right.
And it was not like society, but I mean it was more of a insurance purposes, you know, but just wanted to say it was just reading the book is just kind of, it touches on everybody's life in some sort of way, about image and how society confront to those type of image that we have to follow.
Right. If you're experiencing something or something's happening or being said to or about your 3-year-old, like 3 years old, that is like we are never free. We are never free.
But okay, so and that was one incident with my 3-year-old, but also my 6-month-old. I mean, you know, 6-month-old, they have no knowledge of what image is, but you know, you walk around the store and then like, oh, look at that, she is. A lady said, oh, she's fat. I'm like.
Yeah.
And so it's like that's the first thing that comes out of people's mouth instead of saying, "Oh, you know, what is the typical thing? Oh, what a cute baby, right?"
Yeah,
lie to me, but I mean it's, but it's like first thing that came out of somebody's mouth was, "Oh, she's fat," and then my wife, somebody else was about to say something, and my wife was like, yes, she's a little heavy, you know, like so in order to prevent that from somebody else from saying it. So so there's no age limit on this type of view of
so health. What both of you are saying really, I was struck by two things, and I wanted to unpack both of them just a little bit, and I wrote them down so I wouldn't forget. But one, the character in the book, how much as a child she absorbed everything.
Mm-hmm.
She may not have been able to explain it, put it into words, but she understood at a profound level that there was either shame or that there was something wrong. but she didn't know why, right? And so I'm struck by Kyla's like memory at age 4 or 5. That's tragic. And then I juxtapose that with what you just said, Jose, about your precious, beautiful 6-month-old and your precious, beautiful 3-year-old. They are beautiful little girls. You know, how much does a 6-month-old absorb?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's the first thing. We can unpack that in a second. And the second thing is, in this book, and as we talk, I'm always struck by how people feel it is okay.
Right?
Right?
So open their mouths and tell you their thoughts.
And offer an opinion on something that is not right. And why do we as a society give a pass to certain things, right? So I'm always struck by that. And I, you know how in your head you have these conversations that aren't real, like, well, if somebody said that, then right? But so anyway, let's unpack that. So the first thing about children and what they absorb and how and why, and what we can actually do to mitigate that, because children pick up. So, in the book, always hearing feeling the tension in the house, but hearing the arguments and the conversations, and at 8, not really understanding the full meaning, but understanding enough to have an effect.
Yeah.
Right. So let's talk about that. Yeah.
Because even on some, I think one of the scene of some of the pages of the book, they discuss how the father Percy, Nyla. I'm not sure whether I'm pronouncing that correctly, but the mother's. So it's how they kind of were blaming each other, right? Mother was saying, "Well, you give me this, and you're doing this, and so that and how the child was listening to that. So even the grandmother also, right? So it's not just this. So it's not necessarily just what the outside, but also the internal, close members of your family. And so in that, for a child, I think it's they get it. I mean, I think if they get it. I mean, even at what age? I think it was around 8. This child was getting up at 9, going to the fridge or hiding food. One occasion that she grabbed some chocolate when the parents were not even looking, and then she was she ate that and it melted, but it still, and then it still was eating that. It's so how an 8-year-old is already know what is wrong. I mean, what's that? So.
Well, I think Renee, it's 2 things. Like in this book, like the main character is getting. I mean, she is definitely being spoken to, particularly by her mother and her grandmother, her mom's mom. Particularly, although there's doctors and random strangers. So she's being definitely spoken to in a very direct way. But so it's not this that she's picking. I mean, it's being handed. It's being heaped upon her without her consent. And one of the things, and Jose's hitting at this, and 2 is the tension and the mom. So the mom's also worried about her size. So even had the daughter, the main character, not been like verbally assaulted constantly by the people who are supposed to love her the most, and let's call it for what it is, because that is what's happening.
Yeah.
Even if that had not been happening, she was still living in a home where her mom was abusing herself. Like the mom was abusing the mom's self. I mean, and having this anxiety about what she was consuming and constantly trying to become some kind of like withering away socially. I heard somewhere that the only way women are socially acceptable in society is when they disappear. And so, so she's trying to, disappear herself to be more socially acceptable. And so even to be a child in the house where the mom is, even if the mom was not forcing the cabbage soup diet on the main character, the main character would still be around a woman who had herself absorbed the messages about not being acceptable to live inside the body she was given.
And just adding to that too, Kyla, I think in the middle of the book, one of Malaya's friends, Shanice. I don't know whether
Yeah, yeah.
she was going through that. I think it was a couple of years now. She was going through a diet. She reduced like initially 50 pounds and then an additional 10 pounds later. And I was hearing her mother, talking to her friends, congratulating her for the weight loss, right? So that is also, you hearing everything, you seeing what your mother's going through, and then your mother is just congratulating your friend for being successful, and that, and the losing weight thing is just contribute to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so I guess the question is, what is our responsibility, right, to intercept that, if you will, right? Because it is right. It is everywhere,
And
subtle and not so subtle.
If I can, this is actually one of my favorite topics, because I do think that anti-fatness and real fat hostility is a socially acceptable form of discrimination. There have been many studies shown that if you are at a job interview and you are just sitting next to a fat person waiting to be called in for the job interview, you are not the actual fat person, you just are proximate to the fat person, that when you have your job interview, you will score less highly than if you had sat someplace next to the room, in a different part of the room. And so this is, I have been, talk about verbally assaulted, then there have been, and I'm not joking, hundreds of times when I have been walking down the street, trying to take my kids to the swimming pool, being at a lake, or being a little kid riding my bike or walking. I mean, it doesn't matter. Just from age 0 to, I will speak something about, it does actually end. I will say this. One thing is great about being middle-aged is at some point you become invisible. It's the greatest moment of my life. But being a young, heavy person, young, heavy girl was, and I will actually say that, in fact, if you look at pictures of me when I was young, I wasn't heavy, but I was just like an athletic girl, but I wasn't pencil thin. In the, like, I am not joking when I say hundreds of times of people shouting from cars, circling around to yell at me numerous different times. People that I know who would claim to love me saying very hostile things about my appearance. And so one of the things, you ask what we can do. And I think, we're the Office of Human Rights, right? And we're all about, like, how can we be kinder to each other? How can we help people get along better? How can we make sure that we're not discriminating? I would say is that size discrimination is real and anti-fat bias is real. And so for those of us who live in this world, and that includes even large people like myself, we can't, we would be naive to think that it hasn't entered into our minds too. We would be naive to think that we're not carrying that bias. And so I think that one of the things we can do is just to try to be, just like literally just try to be aware of it. Like if you are in a crowd and you see a bunch of people of different sizes, and maybe you're not that interested in talking to the large person, and I don't mean like as a date, I just mean like in a crowd, like in a conference. Well, maybe it's because you think that they're not as interesting or something just because of their appearance. And so to try to catch yourself and be like, oh, I'm going to go make an effort to talk to this person that maybe I wouldn't normally talk to. And then also the other thing is, as Jose said, we can also all just keep our mouth shut.
Yeah.
We don't have to say everything that goes through our head.
If I may add something to that, I mean, this might not be relevant to the conversation, but Kyla said that you feel like invisible. I was going to say that maybe you shower with lemon juice, oh,
we have to tell that story. We'll have to tell that story.
but on the other point, I think you mentioned one of the examples of people being discriminated at job interviews. One thing that I just wanted to point out is that back in before the pandemic, I guess 2019 or 2020, the Office of Human Rights law was changed. In Kyla, you were part of that when we had to change the definition of what personal appearance is. In weight discrimination now is protected. It's protected in Prince George's County if you feel that you've been discriminated, and that's part of the personal appearance. So I just wanted to put that out just to make sure that people know, whoever's listening, that in Prince George's County, that is protected, and we are the office to investigate those claims.
Yeah. Thank you.
One thing I did want to say, only so that we're looking at, all sides. You made the comment, just because something about pencil thin, but there is discrimination on that spectrum, not as much, but there is, and there is judgment, whether you're sick or smoke crack or right, because there is that, oh, well, look at her, right, and I'll just say that people overall can be hurtful. We can be hurtful to each other, right, and I'm not going to make this about me, but I'm just offering a different perspective because, we moved my family. The first time I lived here was at age 10. I was American at birth, just not born here. But I moved from a culture, and maybe it was because the ages were different, right? So by then we were living in England, and so I was 2 years younger than everyone in the comparative class here in the States, and not at all conscious about body or body image. That was not even a thing when I was in England. But fast forward to here. So I'm in 6th grade, which is, I was 9. I just turned 10 when I started 6th grade, barely, like a couple of days. And I remember that first year was the hardest year because everybody in the class made fun of me because I was painfully tall and thin.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, oh, your knees are like doorknobs. And I mean, all the hateful things that you internalize.
Yeah.
And so, yes, it's not to diminish because, yes, society does accept painfully thin more than the converse or the other end of the spectrum, perhaps. But I guess I just want to stick up for those that maybe I'm not painfully thin. I'm not pencil thin anymore. I outgrew it. But what I'm saying is there is, and it's like, oh, we're just joking. But those things you internalize. Mm-hmm. We as human beings internalize those things. So yeah. So I think it really is if anybody that doesn't fit into what society thinks of as the norm, if you're one side or the other, right? If you're outside of that, then there is grief that you are given. There are cultural things as well, though. So, right. So I don't know. Maybe if I'd stayed in England another 2 years and I was at the age that, my classmates were here, maybe body, but, so unaware of body and what, what are they talking about was the first thought. And then the second was just day after day and just, it was horrifying. It was horrible. It was a horrible first year of trying to get acclimated to the culture of my origins.
So let me say something about, you mentioned culture. Sometimes it's culture. I just wanted to say that I'm not generalizing in terms of the Latino community, but some is, you see a child that is petite or skinny, wearing pencil thin or whatever the term. There's people that say, oh, not being, they're not fitting him, but they're not fitting her. But if the person, if the child is thicker, it's like, oh, they fitting her too much. It's so what is the level, right? So that culturally, I mean, I hear that stuff too for some of the Latino community.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, in different cultures, it's a sign of wealth and beauty, right? And I know, in my later years, we left here and we went to the Middle East. And I remember, by then I was 16 maybe. And I was still thin, but I wasn't I didn't think I was painfully thin. And I remember, here, eat. Oh, you need to eat. We like our women a little. I'm like, well, first of all, I'm not anybody's woman. But so it's just, so then that's universal then. So why do people feel that they can comment on things that are so intensely personal, such as a person's appearance? If you don't know them, one, if you don't have a relationship, like total strangers randomly, okay, that's one thing. But then, people that are not really, in your life, or you don't know them like that. You want to say, is that the type of relationship we have? That can I then comment on your fashion sense, or may I now comment? Right? Like, where's the line? Like, why is it okay? So,
well, I was gonna say, first of all, I think it's so good to just be reminded that nobody wins, and so my comment was because, of course, in my world, I have always thought, okay, if only I looked pencil thin, if only I was like that, it would be okay. And of course, the answer is that it's not okay. You're never free of it. And I'm not sure. I think it's probably gendered. I'm not saying men get a free pass.
That's a good point.
I do think, and Jose, feel free to, I'm not trying to deny anyone's experience. My sense is that it's much, much, much more brutal for women.
I agree with that. I mean, I don't see that that's an issue for, I mean, personally, I just haven't experienced a guy saying, oh, I need to go. Well, I do say it sometimes, but I don't follow my diet. I just say it and never follow through. Yeah, I don't think it. I think it's more, like you said, brutal for female because of that social standard of what beauty is defined, right? And how television shows, and how I guess in the past no longer, people were to see the models, famous ones are very thin but they're rich, so it's like that is that if you define beauty, it's body image, I guess. Yeah. I mean, that contribute to how we see in society. For male, I don't think it's relevant. I mean,
I think it transcends all cultures. I think there is always a double standard, always, right? As a woman, you have to look a certain way depending on what that culture is, right, to be desirable or to be marriageable. I'm thinking back on our conversation with Rabia Chaudhry in her Fatty Fatty Boom Boom book. But yet the guy who's passing the judgment, I know you're anybody's ideal of not a woman's ideal of attractive.
Oh God, I do think it's good and it does change culture. It's not the same, right? The beauty standard is not the same. I think that's really important to realize that it is not all cultures expect women to be very thin, as an example, but there is still that expectation. I do want to talk about something, and Renee, just you were saying, like, why do we feel entitled to do this? So I would like to share with the viewers one of the most hilarious and frequently said lies that I experienced, and you see it in this book, Back to the Book, which is people saying, "Oh, I'm just worried about your health." Like, my health is great. Would you like to see my blood numbers? Aren't you taking high blood pressure medication? Isn't your wife on high blood pressure medications? But because she's thin, you're worried about my health is great. You want to come to the doctor with me? So it's not about my health. It's not about my health. If you're worried about my health, you would be worried about people who are smaller than me, but on different medications or whatever. Or maybe yourself. Maybe you're on high blood pressure meds. Are you worried about your health? Right. So it's not ever been about health. And I think that's also true if people are coming after someone for being thin. I'm worried about your health. Well,
that's true.
No, you don't know anything about my health. You literally know nothing about my health.
No, that's true.
Absolutely. But for as a large person, and I don't know how much smaller people have heard this, the coded language about I don't like the way you look, because I have some made up standard and I'm the god of what people should look like. So now I'm going to tell you what you should look like. Right. The coded language is I'm just worried about your health. Yeah. And it's like, well, then call up my doctor and find out how great my blood pressure is. They always have to keep checking it because it's so low. They're like, oh, it's only like 117/70, but you're fat. Let me just take it twice. So what is the health? What is my health problem that you're worried about? And she has this with her parents also being like, your health, but like what is wrong with her health?
I guess now I know why my wife mean when she say, I'm just worried about your health.
Yeah, you can tell her, call me, and we'll have this conversation.
And I'll just say, and again, not to make it about me, but it just made me remember, like, when anorexia was like the conversation du jour, I would have some people very close to me look at me side-eyed, like, it's like, are you serious? Are you serious? I do everything I can to keep from throwing up when I'm sick, like including like, you know, like that's the worst thing that I could possibly do. So yes, it's these judgments under the guise of, I'm just worried about your health. It's all a lie.
Yeah. I think like if I go back to the book and I think about like what's maybe underneath it for her mom and grandma, right? Because they were concerned.
Yeah.
And they did verbally assault her. They were both cruel, although I think particularly with the mom we see the love there. I think with the grandma we mostly saw coldness.
Yeah.
But I think if we try to kind of back ourselves out of it a little bit and look at it like I'm not here to necessarily give them a pass, but these are women looking at a woman in a particular culture, American society, wanting her to have a happy life. And although they contributed greatly, they were probably the cause of most of her unhappiness, actually. I think what was underneath it was this: we are in a world that is unkind to large women, and I want to do whatever I can to make sure that it's not unkind to you. And what's so interesting, and we've seen this with other books we've talked about, where parents visit the pain on the child. It's the parents who harm the child, and their excuse is, I don't want the world to harm you. So the parents are bringing the harm. It's very interesting. It's not that, and we've had this with other issues, like not weight, but we've seen it.
Right.
The parents visiting the harm that they claim they're trying to protect the child from.
I think that in this story, you're absolutely right. But I think then the overlay is being an African-American woman, right? And so I was struck by the generational nature of this abuse or this,
But I think I definitely agree with you in terms of that. We as a parent, sometimes you focus on certain things with your child, and you saying this and that and the other, and then not realizing how you have contributed to that what you're trying to correct, right? I mean, we talk about this book. This is a child that is eight, then 10, and then. But at that time, I mean, when the child is small, who controls what the child is eating, right? Who buying this stuff? And so it's the parent, right? There's no rule, there's no restriction, there's no guidance on at the initial level. So, but then you go in attack, or like you kind of describe it, verbal abuse her based on her weight, but you are actively contributing to what she's going through.
Yeah, it is an interesting dichotomy that we as human beings, we get ourselves caught up in it. I did love the father's sort of advocacy for his child. Let her be a child, let her, she's okay, let her, right? But again, it's through their eyes, right? Through their childhood and not wanting to repeat. So, I mean, even those issues were a result of his childhood and not wanting his baby to have the same type of childhood. He wanted his child to be a child. And so did she, but it was through the lens of how anyway, it's all very complicated, but
it is hard to be a human in the world. I'll say that.
It is.
Hard. And I do want to just circle back to and I mean, I know we've got a bunch of people watching with us right now. And so please join in the comments, because we do love to hear from you. This question, right? Like how many of us, and I'm not asking people to call themselves out. That's not what I'm asking. This is just to think about how many people who are watching right now can feel in their chest that kind of seizing pain as we think about a comment about something about the way we were born that was so stabbing to us, that was done to us maybe five minutes ago or 50 years ago, that really we carry. And what are, how can we go forward in a way that is more warm for ourselves, but also again, like for others? And I really appreciate Jose pointing out that like literally people of Prince George's County, there is personal appearance protection. So if you, like in a very literal sense, if you feel like you're being discriminated against at your job, in education, like at a public accommodations, which means like a business, in any of these areas, because of your appearance, among other things, we are the people that you can call. So there is that kind of protection kind of after the fact, but what can we do? Like, how can we be kinder to each other? I mean, it's a real genuine question. Like, how can we?
I think we have to call it out when we see it, like we do for any other intervention or bystander or whatever, you know. It is not okay. As you said, there seems to be this understanding, wink, wink, that it's okay to say hateful things to certain groups because we have determined, you know, we have passed judgment and decided that that's okay, right? But you know, what if a stranger came up to somebody and said, "Well, I think you should not wear, you know, shorts," or right?
Right.
I'm not talking about size. I'm talking about
right.
Exactly, like it's none of your business. Right. So, I mean, I think we do. And I think, as you said, we have to check our own biases. We have to be aware.
I'm fully aware that I have bias against fat people, and I am a fat person. And so, and I'm saying this because also everybody watching, this is the diversity dialogue. This is the whole point of the show, is that we really do talk about, like, to really, and I'm saying this quite sincerely, that if I cannot be willing to be up here and to tell you honestly about knowing that I have areas to grow, how can I possibly expect anybody else to be able to look internally and realize that they have ways to grow? And this was a horrible lesson for me about 10 years ago. I was living in northern British Columbia, and I came walking out of a fair. I was in a fair, and there was a woman in front of me, a larger woman in front of me, who had a tattoo. And I remember just thinking that her tattoo looked kind of like, I don't know, I passed judgment in my head. I just thought her tattoo looked kind of bad. And not 5 seconds later, I saw a very, a fit, slim woman with like a lot of definition in her arms with a tattoo, you know, very similar tattoos. And I was like, oh, that tattoo looks great. In my head, I mean, thank God I didn't open my big mouth. But I had these split-second thoughts. And with the split-second thoughts, I was able, and I'm really grateful to myself. I'll say this. I'm grateful that I was able to take the next step and be like, what is the difference between those two tattoos, Kyla? Like, you have you of all people have this anti-fat bias. And so I'm aware that
but that is kind of learned behavior, isn't it? I mean, so if it's a steady diet that you were fed of this bias, right? I mean, if you have memories at five, you were like this.
Yeah, I used to go to
baby.
I used to go to this woman's house after kindergarten, because I was in morning kindergarten from like 9 till 11:30 to 12, and so I would go to her house, and I just remember her saying, "I'm not allowed to give you a cookie because you're on a diet." And I just remember being like, so I was probably 5 because my birthday's in November. So, but a brand new 5-year-old, and it's not that I needed the cookie. I don't really care about that. But my point is just, that was the first I'd heard. My parents had, I mean, I'm assuming, my dad, I think, is watching. He can let us know. But my parents were concerned about a 5-year-old's weight, and had told this babysitter person, Mrs. Dubois, if I remember her name correctly, that I was on a diet. And it's just like
but you didn't know what that word meant, right? But you understood did you understand?
That there was something wrong with me. That there was something wrong. My takeaway, the little child takeaway, is that there's something wrong with me. I have no doubt that parents are doing this from a place of caring. Like the same thing in the book.
Right.
Again, the grandmother is a little harder to say. It's a little harder to find the love. But that the mom is coming from a place of love, and that the mom is a larger woman. The mom is a larger woman who puts this abuse on herself. And then we see her, in this book, we see the mom, she's a professor. And so we see her in front of her class, just this like lit up, radiant, incredible being. And the narrator talks about the mom in this is a completely different, strong, like I use that word, luscious, like this, just rich in every way. And I actually this is a great chance for me to answer this question that Ms. Vivian gave us. She says, it's a title, Big Girl, talking about a variety of things. And I don't really want to give the ending of the book away, but I will say that absolutely, because really, and we see this with the mom and the professorship, is what does it mean to live a big life? Right. And so big girl, meaning like a girl who's big in the negative sense, which is a lot of what the book is about. But then you get this other part where these are women, and not just the mom. There's a friend that comes in, and there's the main character herself who look at what does it mean? Don't we all want to live big lives?
Yeah, full.
Oh my gosh, like I just get the chills even saying it. So that's what so Ms. Vivian, the answer to that question is yes, it is more than size, but it is looking at like this kind of celebration of being in yourself, whatever whatever your size, whatever your shape, whatever your physical experience in the world is, that you're in it in such a full dynamic, fully present way.
Yeah.
And I love that. I love this like celebration of living a big life.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a coming of age as well, Miss Vivian. So just
Yeah.
when you think about the angst of coming of age, and
Yeah, and Susan's got this completely. That's kind of what I was saying with whatever reason I
Yeah.
couldn't have a cookie when I was in kindergarten. Not that I'm traumatized, but y'all should bring me cookie snack because I'm obviously upset about this from kindergarten. It's coming from a place of concern. And
Yeah.
how do we, and I think this goes back to our question, how can we love people
Yeah.
and recognize those moments when our concern is not about health, even though it makes us feel comfortable to say that it is.
Yeah.
But our concern is our own socialization,
Right.
our
Projecting
own
just
bias.
just as Susan said. Yeah, definitely is projecting. That's kind of what I picked up also from the grandmother, actually, because of how the grandmother is described, right? But the grandmother doesn't have the language to express it. Comes across cold and unfeeling and just negative. And so I mean it's just as harmful, whether it's the mom, I'm doing this out of love and you have to count this and we have to do this, right? And the grandmother, with the little jabs, constant snide remarks. But yeah, it is definitely, I also thought projection, generational projection. Yeah.
One of the things that I like that we haven't really talked about yet, and I think is a really important part of the book, was the richness of her family and her neighborhood, and so food part of that. Besides the relationships and the smells and the walking down the street and the family, so we've been a little hard on the parents so far, particularly the mom and the grandma, but there's this very rich family throughout the book, and her and talking about like different, like the grandma has a certain point of view, when I say certain, I mean a negative point of view about the dad's family. So there's some class, there's class ideas or fears that maybe did not come to fruition, but the grandma speaks openly about having had some bias, some class-based bias against the dad and his family. And so there's the characters in this book are from so many different, so multidimensional, I think, and talk about it's, you talk about intersectionality. So this is not just a book about size. It is a book about race, and it's a book about place and belonging and class. And it's pretty rich.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I think anybody could relate some sort of, in some way, some sort of passage there to something.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. It's even though the setting is through the lens of an African-American child as she matures and grows, as Jose said, there's something for everyone because there are common experiences and common feelings and, commonality of navigating this world.
Yeah. So I wrote an essay once about well, not once, I've written many essays on the subject of being fat. One of them, they're all terrible, that's why they're not published. But anyway, one of them was I talk about what it feels like to have somebody come up to you and say you have such a beautiful face. It's just a horrible thing. And I'm assuming it doesn't happen to smaller women. I think smaller women are just told that they're beautiful. I don't know. I've never been a smaller woman that's just been told I'm beautiful. But to have so many times in my life, someone's like, you have such a beautiful face. And so one of the things I loved was seeing this in this book where she says it, somebody says to her, you have a beautiful face. And she said it made her feel like they wanted to cut off her head. And I thought that was so wonderfully evocative. And I will say, when we talk about what we can do, I will just say to all of you out there, if you have someone in your life whose body shape you don't love, I don't care what size it is, you don't really love it, you don't need to tell them they have a beautiful face. You can just tell them that they're beautiful. I give you permission to just say they're beautiful.
Yeah. It's a huge micro aggression. I mean, maybe maybe it's not micro. It's right because that
No.
is. It's. I mean,
And I think but again, something that's not meant to be. You think about it. If somebody comes up and says, "Oh my gosh, you have such a beautiful face," they're not meaning. I can't imagine they're meaning to say, "But your body's terrible," which is what we hear afterwards, right? I mean, we fill in the blank of that statement, but I'm sure it's not intended. I believe it's really meant to be complimentary. So again, this is what can we do? We can think about what are the things that we're saying that may not be as complimentary as we intend them to be, and you can just tell someone they're beautiful.
Yeah, well, and for young Black girls growing up in different eras when there was no reflection of themselves anywhere. Oh, you're pretty for a Black girl, right? I mean, it's the same. That's not a compliment.
No.
Yeah.
You have a pretty face is not. That's a microaggression. That is more hurtful and harmful because it's just,
yeah. Well, you could be so pretty. Could I be?
Right, could be.
Thank you.
Right.
Thanks so much.
But we don't say those. We don't say those things to little boys or to grown men, right? We don't say, "Oh, you have such a handsome face."
Yeah, it's weird. It's a funny. We're funny. Humans are funny.
Yeah.
We are funny. Oh.
But like you said, Ms. it's you have to kind of see this book on what it's saying. I mean, at the time of late 80s, early 90s time frame. I mean, some of us are familiar with that time frame. You have to also put that in context that, like you said, you couldn't relate to anybody on television. You couldn't see somebody that actually looked like you in certain places, certain advertisement, nothing like that. Especially in this case, she lived in New York, so you see those things. But that kind of probably was restricted on what she didn't see people that represented her.
Yeah.
So.
I think societally we are making better. We're moving forward a little better in some areas in terms of representation, but I'm reflecting on sort of the Monday's anniversary, and all of these things that we're talking about, this included. Unless we are aware and cognitive and we keep it at the forefront talking about it, we slip back into our old ways.
Where were we? Somebody remind me. Yesterday, today's Tuesday, right? Yesterday, I was somewhere where somebody said we have to. I'm so sorry. I need help with my memory. We have to do this work every day. It was to do with the 60th anniversary of the March on Washington.
Yeah. We were at we were at a meeting.
That's right. With the meeting. Okay, that's right. We were at a meeting. Yeah. And in this meeting, we had a conversation. I think it was actually Renee who said it, but that we have to do this work. It's never done. And so it's daily work.
Right.
And it's daily work. It was you. I'm quoting Renee Battleworks right now, who is a great person to learn from. And, but it is really worth highlighting, which is like the work. So social justice work, and whether it's about appearance, which is real and can harm people so deeply for so long, or race, real and can harm people in such enormous ways for so long, gender. I mean, all that it is daily, and it will never. If I'm quoting Renee Battleworks correctly, it will never end. Like it is our life's work, and for all
we have to commit to exactly.
Whether or not you're in civil rights work as a human in the world, to do the work to get along, to be kinder, to be aware of your own biases, which I have spent 4 years coming on this show and really try my best to identify when I have them. And again, not because everyone needs to know my personal business, but I honestly believe that it's okay. If we don't acknowledge we have biases, we can never, ever fix them. And I think people are afraid to say that they have biases. And I think if you can't look at it, and you'll have to tell me, but just internally, if you can't recognize when one pops up, you have no chance to do a better job. And so I'm hoping that my work here over the last 4 years has at least been to help people feel like it was okay to say internally, maybe I could do a better job in that area. I hope it's been valuable.
No, So do we have any comments or questions?
We don't have anything new that's coming, but yes, for anybody who's watching, please, if you have any questions or comments, if you've read the book and you have a comment you'd like to share, we'd love to hear it. And then also if you have questions for us, obviously we've talked a lot about body image and size. But if you have a question for us, we'd love to hear it too.
Yeah.
I will maybe take a moment, if I can, just to switch streams really quick, just while we wait to see if somebody put something in, and just let you know that we have 2 more sessions coming up on our diversity dialogue for this year. Then we're taking a break. So we're doing, and I'm not going to be able to remember what they are because I said that without having prepped in advance. I know that in September we're doing The Man Who Can Move Clouds, on which, and then in October we're doing There by Tommy Orange. So that is October's book they're holding up, There by Tommy Orange. It's also the One Maryland One book this year. So what One Maryland One book is it's when all of Maryland reads books, and those various the same book and those various book clubs all over the state. You can find that out by going to One Maryland One book. But our diversity dialogue in October, part of our kind of lead in for Native American Heritage Month, as well as we're going to join in with One Maryland One book, is looking at There by Tommy Orange. And in September, the last Tuesday in September, we are doing The Man Who Could Move Clouds. And I don't have the author's name at my fingertips. So I hope that people will consider joining us coming up in October, November. Did either one of you have anything? We don't have any more questions. Did either one of you have anything you wanted to sort of say before we close out for tonight?
No, just I appreciate the dialogue with my colleagues, truly. So thank you, Jose. Thank you, Kyla, for including me. And yeah, it's a lot of work to get prepared for, additional work, but I think it's worth it. So Jose thinks he's going to leave us after some of the sessions.
I definitely will leave after this October.
That's what he thinks.
Actually, I do want to take a second and say, first of all, our colleague from the library, we were supposed to have somebody from the library with us tonight who has let me know that she had to be out on some emergency leave. So I do want to take a moment and also honor the library for 4 years of partnership and collaboration, and really also in terms of Michelle Hamiel, who is the person who started this with me 4 years ago. Just incredible, honest work and partnership, which has been awesome. And since Michelle left, Renee and Jose have been just incredible, wonderful, very patient partners for coming in. And so, we do have questions. First of all, my dad said, "Thanks, you 3 beautiful people." Thanks, Dad. You're the best. And we have another comment here from Sherry Bryant Moore, who's thanking us for a very interesting discussion. But we also have a question from Susan Roberts, which is what it means to act like a lady was another theme. So thank you so much, Susan, for bringing that up. And can we talk about that theme? That's a great one. Do one of you want to take? Feel like I've been chatting a lot. Do you want to take it, or do you want me to jump in?
Well, I won't talk necessarily from the book's perspective, but Act Like a Lady is such a it's another one of those things. Like, what does that mean, and who gets to determine what that is? And are there consequences? Should there so? Yeah, I don't know. It's a great question. Tyra, what do you think?
Well, I think it goes into I love the question. And Susan, speaking of someone who's been with us this whole 4 years, Susan Roberts, so wonderful to see you and have you with us here. To me, it's more of this kind of narrow conscription. And so as I remember in the book, some of that really came up from the grandmother, and it was also to do with, we talk about living a big life and what it might be to live a big life. And even as I say those words, I feel my body changing, and it's not about, my smile comes up and my arms are out, and I just have this expression. And with the grandmother, it was more like, we're going to be contained. It was this kind of containment. And so you can think about that as it relates to size, although, as I think Susan's question makes clear, it's not just about that at all. How are we behaving? What's appropriate behavior? A kind of, I don't think the word demure is used, but maybe we could imagine a kind of demureness. And maybe not being leathersome women in a shopping store. Wow, Kyla, what other kind of store might there be? Okay, who are loud and laughing loudly, and the grandmother kind of looks at them being too much. So I do think, my sense, and I mean, Susan, if you've got time to type it in, what your takeaway is.
But I think the overlay though is through the lens of being an African American person, because as a Black person, that is one of the things that one of the stereotypes, that we are loud and we are silly, right? And so I think, if you look through the lens of the grandmother, sometimes depending on where you're raised and what part of the United States, you are taught to not draw attention because it's dangerous, that you have to be contained. You have to, you have to try and be invisible because it's not safe. So yeah, it probably wasn't satisfying, our answers, Susan. But we could probably do a whole lot about.
I was like, that's a whole conversation too, and I think that it's also true for men. Like I have heard men talk about like needing to be the consummate barbecuer, and it sort of sounds like it. But like, what if you like this kind of? I don't think men are free from like a narrowness of what it means to be in like guy culture. So I do think that's not in the book, but I do think that is a conversation that we definitely could have. I do want to address one more thing,
but I'm not sure it's as rigid or unforgiving.
Oh, absolutely not. Absolutely. I just wanted to acknowledge
that from my women's
they're free of it. Jose, you're right here. Jose.
I mean, that I would defer to you on the expertise of that question.
That was a non-answer. That was good.
Yeah, I did get one more question on my personal cell phone that I do want to address. Somebody did write to me, one of our longtime viewers, not my dad, but somebody else, did write to me to ask me if I was crying. I'm actually not crying tonight, which makes this different than so many of our other diversity dialogues. I feel like this is the only one where I haven't been crying. But I appreciate you reaching out. Everything's fine. I feel great. Everyone's great. But I thought I would put that question out in public just in case anybody else was worried. I do think we're probably pretty much at time.
Yeah.
And so I do want to just conclude again, as I was saying, like I really do appreciate everybody who's been with us. I mean, we do this for you. We are so glad you're with us, and this book is really great. There's a lot of richness to it. I saw Renee was just holding it up. The author actually lives in DC. She's a local professor. She is worth checking out. My memory serves me, she's published other things, but if my memory serves me, this was her first debut novel, won a bunch of awards, and a wonderful local author to us here right in the DMV. So for everyone who's tuned in, thank you so much for being with us. To our library friends, partners for this event, and so many of the other work that we do, we really thank the library. If you haven't got a chance to read this book, you can get it out from the library, buy it from your favorite local independent bookstore. And we do invite you to join us at all of the awesome things that we do, which you can find by either going to our office at civilrights.mypgc.us, or you can also check out the library's event webpage, because we do a lot of partnership with them. And their events webpage is pgcmls.info/events. All right. Thank you, everybody.
Maybe you go first.
No. One more thing, and that just wanted to tell the viewers that we don't do just this great event like what we do now, but other events, but we also, the Office of Human Rights, investigate discrimination complaints in the area of employment, housing, public accommodation, law enforcement, commercial real estate, education, and that's some of the areas. So just if you see this show and you have somebody, Office of Human Rights.
And the other thing I was going to say is our hate bias. Kyla, do we have that registration link on our?
We don't, but we will have it, because Renee has just said we will have it on our website in 5 minutes. Go to our website on September 14th and September 15th, Tuesday, September 15th. There is a hate bias.
No, September 18th and 19th.
September 18th.
Isn't it? 18th.
It's the 19th. Okay, I'm just making up dates now.
Yeah, Tuesday will be in the website.
September 19th.
Right. So by way of background, the Maryland Attorney General's office and our state, our sister colleague at the state, Maryland, boy, all of our brains are dead. MCCR, Maryland Commission on Civil Rights, Prince George's County Office of Human Rights, Howard County Office of Human Rights, and
Montgomery County
and Equity, and Montgomery County Office of Human Rights. All of us are joining together to have a hate bias forum, and the public is invited to attend and to talk about these things on Tuesday, September 19th. It is going to be in Germantown, so we hope that you can travel there, in Montgomery County at the Montgomery County Community College. And it's a free event, but registration is required by September 1st. So we encourage you to look at that. We're really wanting to hear from the community, what the community feels and thinks about what's happening. The day one is for law enforcement to really teach them, what their requirements are. It's not just hate crimes, but hate incidents or bias, things that don't rise to the level. So we're trying to capture all of that. So yes, please go to our website, give us a few minutes, even tomorrow.
Yeah, I need 5 minutes.
Yeah, and we encourage you to register for that event. And you'll see Kyla's there, and you'll see Andrea, and so thank you. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you, Kyla.
Okay, that was great. We were very organized for that little pitch. So thank you everybody for being with us again. We're gonna let you go, but please reach out to us. You know how to reach us, and we'll see you hopefully at some of our events in the future. All right, take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.